Okay, so a while back I made this little short with a guy jumping through a window. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I'll start off with a cube here, but there are a couple more videos that I put out there that you might go for a little more information. So I scaled it down and then moved it up by 1. I checked the face orientation because sometimes if I scale you kind of go through the bottom and reverse all the faces. And here I moved it up 1 and I'm showing you how to make a quick favorite. If you go to this menu and you right click, you have the option to add to quick favorites here. And then when you hit the Q menu, you can add that and make it happen. And here it's the set origin to 3D cursor that I added there. And so I'm scaling it out. And then what I want to do is import the character and put a window in the middle of the plane here. So I go into edit mode after I rotate it because I already know which way the character is going to be facing when I import him. So I rotate it at 90 degrees, move it a little bit in Y. And then I'm adding the character with import FBX. And this is just a character where I picked it from Mixamo and imported the character, chose the animation, characters from another video that I put out, this little lizard man. And there's a number of creatures, people, animations that you can import there. And here he is. And he's jumping through the wall right now. So I add a couple loop cuts and position it so that I have a little window in the middle. And then I selected one of the faces. And then if you hit P, you can separate by selection. And that'll make it another object. And I deleted the back face to it. Now if I hit 2 on the keyboard and do a Alt left mouse button select, you'll get both loops around the hole, and then you can bridge edge loops and it'll put faces along those edges. So that's how you close up the hole. So I'm going to hide that and bring back the original plane, and then I'll extrude that out a little bit, and this is going to be our window. So I select the face and then E to extrude, and there's our window. And then what I want to do, if you go to preferences, you can turn on cell fracture, and then it'll show up here in quick effects, cell fracture. And you can change the noise here, and what I really want to do is give it some geometry first. So I go into edit mode, and then I do a couple subdivisions. And now if I go to quick effects, cell fracture, it'll give me some interesting shapes. And down here you can look at my other video on cell fracture and it'll give you a little more information. But I'm increasing the noise, and I gave it a collection to dump all the pieces into the cells. And you can see it's added a window collection, and there's a bunch of cells in there. Now the original window is still there. So if I turn that off into the visualization, we're looking at just the cells. So what I wanted to do is select some of these and make them active objects that are going to break off of the window, and then the other ones are going to be sort of passive rigid objects, so they're just going to be fixed there. So if you go to Object Menu, Rigid Body, add Active to one of those pieces that's going to be active, you can copy from active to all the other selected objects, and then you can see they're all active rigid bodies. So I have all the passive here, and I'm going to do the same thing, select them all, add passive in under rigid body, and then copy from active. So now all of them have passive rigid body on them. And then these, I'm going to go ahead and move them into a collection. So if I go Object, Collection, Move to Collection, I can choose the passive collection to put them in. And then I can hide that. And then do Alt-H to unhide the pieces that are active. And actually it unhides everything, so I'm going to go ahead and hide the passive pieces and then hide the original cube and the unfractured window, and then I have just the active objects, and I'm going to go ahead and hide the character and its armature. So then under Object, if I go to Rigid Body, I can add a connection. And here I'm going to add a fixed connection, and the location is going to be selected, so you can see the coordinate systems kind of move to each of the objects, and then chain by distance. So then we have all the constraints here, and I'm going to go ahead and select all of them. And then if I go over to the menu over here, and then if I hold down the Alt key and click on breakable, I can make them breakable. And then if I hold down the Alt key and change the threshold, I'm changing the threshold at which it breaks. So this is setting a limit to when those pieces that are fixed together will break apart. So because the character has a lot of geometry, what I want to do is add sort of a proxy object that's going to actually do the rigid body, that's going to be involved in the rigid body simulation. So I'm going to position it close to the window and then set a keyframe and then move ahead in time. Right to when the character is going through the window, and then set a keyframe there. And then at the next keyframe, at the next time increment, I'm going to move that through the window. So that's going to actually do the breaking. And then go ahead and set a keyframe. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide this from the render and the viewport, so we don't see it, but it's still going to be involved in the rigid body simulation. You'll see that in a second. And I'm going to make it a passive object and an animated. So if I restart it, you can see it flies through and breaks the window. And here I played around with it a little bit to change its position at the beginning, and I seem to like that a little bit better. So just play around with it until you get something that you like. So there you can kind of see what happens when the object goes through the window. And I changed it to mesh. I thought that looked a little better as far as the collisions. And then did some adjustments to the threshold. Made it a little bit less, and you have to hold down the Alt key to have it apply to all the constraints. So I made the wall a passive rigid body, and then I added a plane, and that's going to be the floor, and that's another passive rigid body. Now you can see the window pieces are kind of hitting on the floor and eventually coming to rest. And here I lowered the threshold a little bit more. I think this is what I eventually used as the final animation. So the wall and the floor are just really basic kind of materials. The one that was a little tricky was the window, and you have to make sure that if you set the transmission to 1, you have to lower the roughness in order to see through the object, and then also you need to turn on either alpha hashed or alpha clipped under the settings. So here I am doing that. The floor, another basic shader, I added some metallic so you got some reflection off of it. And then what I did, I used the alpha on the material, and this applies only to the window and then the cells of the window. And what I did, I turned the alpha to 0 for all the pieces, and then 1 for the original window that's not broken, and then right when the guy goes through the window, I switched those, and just you can use keyframes in order to do that. And it's just making one visible and one invisible, and then switching it right when he's going through. So it looks like an unbroken window until he hits it, and then when he hits it, it turns into shards. So that's basically it. You can watch the rest of the video, and I think I have some others that you might get some additional information from if you go to them. And that's the rigid body constraints and cell fracture, and also how to use Mixamo to import animated characters. And it can be either your own character or one that Mixamo has for you. In this case, I used one straight from Mixamo. So if you like the video, go ahead and click like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.